In this video, I'm going to give you a quick tutorial on how to use Midas's offline editor. The offline editor is a great way to create and edit any existing show files from a Pro Series console. Just so you know, this can be used for Midas Pro 1, 2, 2C, 3, 6, 9, and ProX. To anybody new to using a Pro Series console, this is a great way to get familiar with how to navigate and use all the functions of the console. It's the same as sitting in front of the console, but just not having the hardware surface in front of you. So let's go ahead and download and install the offline editor. To download the offline app for any of the Pro Series consoles, we head to the musicgroup.com page, and then if we click on Brands, we can now scroll down to Midas. Once we've reached the Midas homepage, we can click on the Downloads tab. Once inside the Download tab, we have all of our categories and subcategories for the products that we're looking for. So for here, we can click on Mixers, then Digital Mixers, and then we can scroll down and find the console that we're looking for. So I'm going to go ahead and click on the ProX. In the type of file, let's click on Apps. And now you see that we have the offline editors showing the newest as well as some of the older versions of the offline editor. The reason why we have some of the offline editors is a lot of consoles out there still have older versions of the firmware, and that's okay. So if you have an older firmware version on your console, I would suggest that you use the same offline editor version. One thing to keep in mind, files created on a newer version of the offline editor may encounter problems on some older firmware versions of the console. So, before you create a file, just try to be sure that you're going to be on a console that has the latest firmware. If you remember from the firmware update video, this could be a quick and easy firmware update. However, on more complex systems, this might be a more time-consuming process. So now, let's go ahead and download the latest version of the firmware. Once we click on that, we have the pop-up for the end user license agreement. After we have read the entire thing, then we can go ahead and click Agree to Above Terms, and then hit Download. As you see down on the bottom, the app is quickly downloading. That's because the file is not very large, which is great. Now that we have our file, we can close out of our browser. Now that the download is complete, let's double click on the file. Here we have the ProX offline editor file that we're going to drag just to the left into the install folder. And now the offline editor is installed on the console. Once the install has been complete, if you head to your Applications folder, you will see that we have the ProX offline editor here. Personally, I like to keep the offline editor down in my home dock so I can quickly access it if I need to. Now, let's go ahead and open up the offline editor. Here, you will see that we're presented with the console overview. As I mentioned at the beginning of this video, the offline editor is going to allow us to have complete and total control of the entire console system as if we were sitting in front of the console itself. This is a great way to go ahead and create and make changes to any existing show files. I'm not going to go through each parameter of the offline editor, but just take my word that everything that you could do on the console can be done here. To get up and running, you're going to go ahead and create a show file like you normally would. If you've never created a show file before, or if you've downloaded the offline editor to get yourself familiar with using the console before you actually step up to one, I suggest you go watch my video on how to create and save show files. For any of you existing users who already have show files and you want to go ahead and use the offline editor, the only way that you're going to be able to get your show files into the offline editor is by inserting your USB stick that has your show file. So I'm going to go ahead and insert my USB stick so that way I can transfer in my show file. Now that the offline editor sees my USB drive, I'm going to click on my show file and click Import to bring it into the offline editor. Here I have the pop-up and I'm going to click OK. Now my show file is in the offline editor. Let me also bring in my preset folder into the offline editor. Now we have the show file and the preset folder ready to go. To access the show file, just like you would on the console itself, we click on it, we hit load, we hit OK, and now we have the file loaded. From here, we can head into the automation window and select automation. And now we can go to anywhere that we need to go in our show file to make any changes to our show and then save them. Saving is the same as you would on the console. If you need to export any of your show files, it's going to be the same procedures that you would go through when you use the console itself. The offline editor is a great tool to have, especially if you're not going to have access to a console at all times. Especially when you're going to be in a situation when you have limited time behind the console to set up your show file. You can simply walk up, load your show file, and be ready to go. And as I said at the beginning of the video, for you folks out there who have never been on a Pro Series console, this is an excellent way to get inside the software and use the software as if you would the real console control surface. This is a great way to get familiar with how to navigate and set up everything that you need to do for your show. I hope you found this video very informative and that you add the offline editor to your arsenal of tools that you use day in and day out.